Welcome to the Make It Happen podcast, where we interview cool people doing cool things. Mike Vanderpool, the creator and producer that put this all together, and I am his special projects co-host, Vince Croce. Our guest tonight is a cool guy because he cares. Darren Moore recently wrote an article in the Toledo Blade and gave some viewpoints on what his thoughts were about where Toledo is at and where it should be going. But before we get into some of that, Darren, tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you a Toledoan?
We made a bet in 2018. There's a lot of factors that went into that, but we are part of the boomerang cohort that many Toledoans or former Toledoans find themselves in or becoming. And we moved back in 2018, and from there, mostly ran my business, which none of it is in Toledo, but have always stayed involved. I served a few years as a Human Relations Commission co-chair, and got a lot of things done in a tumultuous time, or during the George Floyd, COVID, things like that. So I've always been involved, but I love Toledo. I think there's a lot of potential. Most of my investments and projects are around the world. And around the nation. So when I make a statement about Toledo, I often contrast it of places I've been, what it could be, and what it should be. So that's a little bit about me. I do run a company. It's a global logistics company. I also have investments in tech, real estate, a lot of different projects. That's a little bit about me.
All right. So you're invested from a familial standpoint in Toledo, from a financial standpoint, from a social giving back standpoint. So you've made your place here. What do you think Toledo has done right in that 10 years since you've been here? What are things that would stand out around the world or around the country? Sure. Or where have we got the ball rolling, got the flywheel going, and what's the positives?
What we've done right, I think that's a two-sided question, because there's what you've done right by intention, and then there's what you've done right by unintentional, but it just so happens. What we've done right is we've created a place where it has very low cost of living, has a lot of the base infrastructure you need. It has a lot of the logistics infrastructure you need, very close to core metro markets. I think what we've also done right intentionally is, as Toledo sort of, how could you say, had a downward projection. I think a lot of people, both on the federal, state, and local side, nonprofit side, we've had a lot of people step forward and give us what I would say a soft landing, for good or for bad. You do hear, and a lot of reactions to my op-ed and some other things has been, maybe we should have just hit bottom, because we could, then really start to constructively build ourselves back up. But what we've done right is we've created a culture of loyalty. We've created a culture of preparedness. We've created a culture of commitment. What I believe we've not done right, if I could just jump over quickly, is I believe we've created a culture of groupthink, meaning in certain classes, they believe that if those groups get together and they could just think it out, we're just going to think this thing back to where it could be. And then I believe we've got an issue with halo effect as well. Halo effect is a bias and a heuristic of the human brain. We can't stop it. But what a halo effect is if a person has done one thing right, well, we should apply that person in this application, and we hope they would do that right as well. So I can say that from a fundamental basis, if you're looking just at business nuts and bolts, we've done everything right we can to prepare for what I think is the next phase. I don't see many deficits, really, for the next phase.
Based on that, everything you laid out, I would think a lot of people would say, I want to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. I want to help build upon that, make it better. Where do you see the logjam or the resistance to leveraging all those positives and everything?
So I tend to speak in metaphors, and you saw that a little bit in the op-ed on the 2-year shot clock. So let's just stick to sports. What I believe is we have a lot of talented players, running sprints, doing the fundamentals. We'll stick to basketball, dribbling, playing defense, shuffle, whatever, jump shot. Now we're to the point where we can't have all these players where they don't have defined positions on the court. And by the way, once you have your players in your positions defined, you can then see where your gaps are. Do you need a forward, whatever. I mentioned one of our major gaps being early stage risk capital and venture capital, right? We have plenty of tall players for mid and late stage investment. Not the first, but they're definitely fast followers. If we can get the first dollars in, we'll follow. But really, once we know who our players are, to play this game that we're going to play in the next 10 to 20 years, we now need to start devising plays to those players. And so it's a two-step process. First is, who really are the players that we need for this next phase? I don't think anybody's going to be a blocker. I don't think politicians or commissioners they're not going to be blockers, because over the last 10 years, when the soft landing folks were putting in that capital for the soft landing, you didn't see the politicians being blockers, right? Sure, they cut ribbons where they didn't have anything to do with it, but that's really an ego issue. But they didn't block anything. Now, in the next phase, we're not going to need excess bodies on the court. We're going to need players that can play, and they're going to have to be able to play, call it in the National League. I mean, ultimately, Toledo's competing nationally, internationally. And so find the players, define the plays, and let's start getting on the court and being serious.
When you talk about defining the players, are there individuals by name or by position? Is it somebody in government? Is it an investor? Who is it? Could you kind of maybe lay out what your dream team would be from what you know of right now?
Gosh, a dream team. That's a tough question. I mean, one thing I would say, and this is a couple of misinterpretations from my op-ed, is that, I took what could be perceived to be shots at some players that are existing, in the political class right now, in the economic development class right now. Those players are still needed. We're not coming in with a brand new team and are going to do something. What I do think we need is, I think we need sophisticated individuals that can have conversations at a national and international level with sophisticated individuals and institutions. I do believe we need probably a couple few, what I would call, not to use the term, but the saviors, the messiahs, the Dan Gilberts of the world, the DeVosses of the world. We need a couple big players to come back and, make a bet or two, even if it's symbolic. I think we need people that are less in the CapEx space, less in the, manufacturing space. We've got that. I mean, we've got that. We need people, and we need folks who are thinking early stage, tech startup, think urban infill. We've got legacy players. We need some young, exciting players to bring those young fans in the stadium. And really, that's a problem I think we're all trying to solve for, which is, how do we get more young people here? Yep. Stop the brain drain. Keep them downtown, get them to meet a significant other, start a family, stay here, don't be pulled away. Because I think a lot of our best players get pulled to other markets, and we know that. UT knows that, BG knows that. Mike even said that, he's teaching to put players into different markets. Now we're teaching to keep those players in our market, and we have to build that team.
Okay. So it sounds almost more like a coaching issue than a player issue.
Yeah.
The players are here. Maybe they need to be given a different role on the court. Mm-hmm. Maybe not a starter. Maybe they're a sub. Maybe they need to work on some skills based on what's going on out there. Those younger players, they may want to stay here, but they're going elsewhere to another team. So if you were the coach, what would you do to get those players to do what they needed economically here in town and to get that next generation, that building the team?
I mean, first, we do need a coach, and we need a manager, and we need a PR, public affairs individual. I mean, broadly speaking, unfortunately, even with all this work today, we're still very much the underdog. You look at Indiana, and you look at IU, look at what they have become so fast. So it's possible. We need, in terms of coaching, we need to realize that some of those older players have aged out for sure. We need to have a coach or a leader that can really organize who's who in the zoo. I don't feel like there's any organizing force. And one of the challenges is that, when we bring investors here, in my day business where I work a lot with senior individuals in the military and intelligence, when I have them come visit me, they all want to meet those coaches and the managers. And the fact of the matter is, your coach, your manager, it's a signal to the league. It's a signal to the players of how serious we take ourselves in this next stage. Yeah, I hope I answered your question there. But I think first off, we got to figure out who we are. And I've started doing that, and I know some folks have started doing that. What are different roles we play? One thing I think we have to get back to, and you'll hear some coaches say it, and you'll hear some military leaders say it. We have to get back to understanding what a win is. And I love the nonprofit ecosystem. I love the grants and all the sort of non-GDP creating money that's come in. But ultimately, when you talk about economic development, it means growing wealth. It means putting wins on the board. It means having a couple unicorns come out of your city. That's what it is. And if we don't have that, then it doesn't matter if all this money exchanges hands in the nonprofit and grant space. We're not putting up W's. So I think that's one thing is we have to get back to understanding what does it mean to win in a capitalist society, in a place where we're so teed up to win.
Do you see anything going on out there in the business arena where we're close to a win, or somebody just needs a little help to make that, so we would have that model of saying, hey, here, we got win number one. Okay, right. Let's replicate it, or let's get on to win number two. Do you see anything on the horizon?
So it's a tough question, because if you talk about manufacturing, you talk about non-core, sort of exurbs and suburbs activities, there's wins all over the board. What I can say is that the first thing that I'm seeing is very positive is there's been a huge good reaction to my article. When I wrote my article, it was actually in response to Brandon's article in the Toledo Blade, which was absolutely spot on. And then before that, it was Johnny Hildo's anonymous article in City Paper, 2 of them. And so I said to myself, okay, once is a chance, twice is whatever, 3 times is a pattern. And so the first thing I think we've got right now, which is amazing, is a conversation that is being had. And I just came from a political event just about an hour ago with a lot of the old blue blood, old money type stuff at Toledo, and they're having the same conversation. So I think if you want to point to something that's extremely positive, it's that. Because I think, in my experience being here for about a decade now, is once Toledoans start getting something in their mind, they tend to get it accomplished. And so that's, I think, our first major win.
Well, I mean, that sounds very positive that good conversations are going on in different arenas. Just as a lifelong resident of the Toledo area, I feel like there's a transformation. There's something ready to happen. I can go down a list of names of people that are making a difference.
Right.
So the talk's going on. The people are out there. How do we activate that? How do we get those people in the same room or talking, or taking it from talking to action?
I mean, it's a carrot and a stick situation, right? I feel like we can dangle the carrot, buy low, you make money on the buy, not the sell. You invest in a market, or you invest in a company like in Toledo, especially early stage, your entry basis is so low, that's the carrot, right? The stick is, getting back to that shot clock. That shot clock, and I have a second planned op-ed where I really get into the data. Based on basically the financial spend over the last decade, sort of the population turnover. I know we talk about brain drain, but like hard numbers. We also look at decreasing young population downtown. So not just turnover in the metro. We also look at the boomer generation and a lot of that capital going down to Florida and the South as they retire. I think the stick is that we quite clearly are at the end of whatever we can do here. And I've asked around, and I asked it in the op-ed, and I've asked to all the major players, I would say in Toledo, if there is a savior coming, if there is another chunk of money, if there is another thing, say it right now. And so far, nobody has come with anything. And so, those big infusions that we saw from the E-Bides and the EDs and, Toledo community and all that and all this, that's not there anymore. I mean, and having talked to Marcy's office, I didn't know our metro area on a national basis is the largest grant recipient per capita in the nation. the last 5 years. And so Marcy's been doing her job in Washington for us. So, but that can't go on forever.
Those people and organizations you mentioned, they've done a lot. You can see it around town.
My gosh, yeah.
The riverfront's looking great. There's a lot of buildings that have been restored. Things are getting cleaned up. You see all that. But we've kind of hit that slowdown. Nobody's come to the table based on your op-ed that you've heard of. Is there a way of inviting somebody? Is there reaching out? What would they need to say to get that person, instead of sending $1 million to Silicon Valley or just keeping in their Vanguard account, to say, no, I'm going to invest in 100 startups to fill up one of the buildings down here.
Yeah.
And see what happens. I get that, that's a vision. I would think it's like, okay, got more than enough space.
Yeah.
And if the ideas are there of kids at UT or BG, let's fill it up and see what happens.
Not to put a finger on a forehead, but in normal conditions, you would have a number of figures in an area that could do that. We don't have that right now. I think if the job falls on really one person, maybe two, and then the third, a type of person. So the first is the mayor, for sure. You look at a lot of places where they have vibrant, excitement, and they have a leader that excites people, that gets on a national stage. And again, I urge the mayor to do this. There's a lot of investment conferences across the United States. A lot of investors are looking for new places for capital to be put, and even internationally. And you go and talk about yourself. And this isn't the RGP sort of like bringing money in from the companies that have been here forever, the Stellantises and this and that, which is all good. But this is about going out, getting people excited, bragging about the city, putting us on a side-by-side. Bring me Austin, Texas, bring me Miami, and let's do a side-by-side on the stage, right? Those sort of things. Be courageous, be bold. To be honest with you, be a bit cocky. And we have the numbers and the fundamentals to be cocky because we've stuck it out so far. Second would be, I think the economic development department in the city and the commissioners need to really plus up that effort. My time on HRC, I got to see underneath the hood. I got to see where money and effort is allocated in terms of bodies and focus. So think like Stop the Violence, or think like violence interrupters, think like that stuff, or economic development. And I can tell you that a 5-person economic development department in today's globe is not going to work for the Toledo. So we need more resources, more support to that department. It's very thin. The third is we do have a lot of high net worth people here. Now, my wife and her company, it's a private wealth management group. They manage, just over $1 billion in assets, a little bit more than that. And, you ask any high net worth individual where their money's deployed, and I can tell you it's not in Toledo. And that's really because there's no deal flow, not because they don't want to be here, but we have to attract the deals. It's a numbers game, and we know that in venture capital. But those rich people attract rich people. And so, whoever wants to take that first jump, I'll raise my hand to throw. I'm not one of those guys, but I'll raise my hand to throw in some as well. I think you're going to have a lot of people come to the table with funds. And so it's those two people, a person, a department, and then a class of Toledo, and that exists today, high net worth.
Having this great interview at Toll House, which ironically is a tech startup. Guy became very successful, invested in Toledo. And if you haven't been down to Toll House, you got to check this out. Once you're down here, you may want to become a member. I just found out there's a cigar bar in the back where maybe I'm not even supposed to tell that until you pay the membership fee, but a great location here. Yes. Darren, you were talking about the individual, the group, and the investors. So what it sounds like to me that I read a book called The One Thing. What's the one thing you can do that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like the mayor getting out there. It looks like he's done a pretty good job of managing. Absolutely. I just looked at some statistics. Crime is down. Yes. The streets are getting paved.
Yes.
A lot of things going good. He's only got one more term left. So it sounds like now would be the time. It's like, okay, step out. Share what you've done. Share what everybody else has done. But Do you think he has that skill set, or maybe getting somebody to help him to, hey, we've got to go on that campaign. Let's get a calendar together, go out, let's work on that presentation. Let's set up some debates with San Antonio and Miami.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Is that?
Yeah. So alternate ending to the Blade article was a call to action. And it was a call to action for the voters. And I didn't mean it to be political. In fact, some people wrote me and said, is this just another guy running for office? And the answer is no. I've interviewed all the people running for office and sat with them, and they're all excellent. Some are not, right? Some are interesting. But I think what you're tapping on is succession planning. And then what skill attributes does that succession have? This has to be one, right? You have to have shown your ability to lead, grow, wrangle, manage, even yourself. How much money have you put in play, right? Early stage venture, stuff like that. And so I think as the mayor thinks about succession, I also Marcy Kaptur as well, Congresswoman Kaptur, thinking about her succession on the Democratic side, even though, the RNC will run. But I think all parties, all major leadership, commissioners as well, commissioner, huge part of it. They need to start thinking about, okay, and I'll tell you something, a very, very senior ranking intelligence individual once told me, because we were talking about life and all this other stuff. And he said, Darren, what you need to realize, and probably Toledoans as well, because big heart, I do, and like all Toledoans, it's hard for us to admit that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to everything. And that's tough because there's things that even in my business today, I'll hear something about it in the news and I'll say, oh, should I go back there and do that again? But sometimes it's okay to say, hey, I've done my job, and we think about players on the field. We think about good leaders. I mean, our founding father, George Washington, was given the option. We talk about it in the No Kings protests. It's okay to say, hey, I've done my duty. Now I'm going to pass it on. So I think where the role really has to, the role and the focus has to be today with all these current leaders is, are you grooming somebody? Is somebody coming up in the ranks behind you that has a proven track record? And the voters need to think about that as well. We don't want people, well, number one, we don't want carpetbaggers who are just parachuting into our district. We don't want that. But what we want is people who are proven. And to be honest with you, I'd rather see proven failures than proven successes. And the reason why is that any great investor, Warren Buffett says it best. He said, I've invested in 1,000 stocks that made money on 9. And the fact of the matter is if you've got that halo effect coming in for this next, leadership class, it's not going to work well because, people poke through that pretty easy. And so I think succession, a smooth transition. John Jones, one of my favorite guys in the community, told me this yesterday. He said that when you pass a baton, the guy passing or girl passing doesn't stop running. They keep running with you. And so in Toledo and in this region, we have to start thinking about beginning, middle, end. For sure, we're at the end of a phase, right? We know that. And then what does that baton passing look like? I would urge all leaders, in their companies, in their entities, including myself, know when you're done with this phase. It's okay to pass along and find somebody you trust.
So let's say those leaders recognize that they see the writing on the wall. They're ready to pass the baton.
Yes, sir.
Is there somebody ready to take it? Do you know of some individuals, or are organizations like Leadership Toledo or EPIC, are they getting those people ready? Are there some young people in government or in other organizations that, like you said, that maybe they failed, but they're moving forward and they're doing something? Do you see, using the sports analogy, we're on the track.
Yeah.
You're ready to hand off the baton. Somebody's got to be there, number one. And are they capable of keeping the pace?
So I'll say, just real quick, when I say they've had to have failed, we want to know about their failures, but they do have to be winners. We don't want anybody learning on the clock in Toledo.
Failing forward.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to articulate that. Me personally, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room, full stop. But I will bring in the best if I can. So when you talk about EPIC, Leadership Toledo, you talk about succession planning. One of our biggest risks in this I mean, really, if you back it back from the 2-year timeline that I talked about, or, people could argue maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. I think we need to change what it means to be a leader in Toledo. And what I mean by that is, quite frankly, some of the best and brightest, epic leadership Toledo, you name it, they don't want that job. They don't want that job. They want to be a leader in another location, in another area that's got a better reputation, whatever, right? So think of that. Like, think of if you've got players who are willing to play and could make it on any team, why would they come and do it here? And so I think the first thing is number one, we're all here. So those people need somebody to look at and say, I recognize myself in that person. And it could be as superficial as the watch they wear, the car they drive, just somebody to look up to that says, I want to be that. So aspirational. But second, we have to change what it means to be a servant leader. And in Toledo, we have to change it from lifelong employees, lifelong politicians, lifelong, people who, maybe didn't, and that's not true, by the way, right? I mean, our city workers, our county workers, these are the best people, some of the hardest workers, but we have to change that narrative, especially for Toledo, right? For everywhere, but especially for Toledo. And so I would focus on that. Do I think there's any individuals? I said all that to lead up to there absolutely are, but they hesitate to step up. And that's where you have to give them that grace, give them that support. I think there's also a fear. I've never faced it, but I think there is some legacy baggage in fighting from different entities, different interests within the community. We as Toledo cannot afford to take shots at each other, because really, if you have a capable leader and you get enough shots thrown at you, I'm just leaving. I've got options. So I think those are some things that I think about. Are there people? Absolutely. I know them. They're in this building right now, some of them. And so I just want to inspire them to take a chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can our generation, other people, help them along, get them to let go of that concern or fear, or being guides, being mentors? What does that look like? How do we help that generation?
It's a good question. I think it starts with making a plan that people can get behind. I think right now, if you were to ask, and I remember on the Mind Story podcast, I talked about like a Toledo vision back in the 1800s. I know that we were working on that early 2010s when that push with ProMedica started to happen. There was a vision. I've seen it. It was on paper. I think we now need to stop thinking about where we've been. Goodness sakes, we could do documentaries on each one of the fumbles that we've done over the last whatever. I think we need to think about, where do we want to be? Let's think about that. Literally, wipe the slate clean. What do we want downtown to look like? What do we want our people to be and grow? What's our target for socioeconomic growth? What are our schools? Forget what they are today. What do we want them to be tomorrow? And then I think publish that plan. And of course, it might not be 100% correct, but we have a saying, proper planning prevents poor performance. And then we also have a saying, which is no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So, but you got to have a plan. And so I think that's where we start. I think once they see that, and I hear it at UT, I hear it at, some of the other colleges and all that stuff, kids are now looking to stay here. And if we could give them less of a reason to leave, I think we win out just there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty inspiring. I like your outlook of, we can't go back to what the city was. We're not going to have 5 Fortune 500 companies down here. We're not going to probably fill the buildings up with that. But there's a lot of things we can do, specifically downtown. I look at that. Yeah. Things could happen here, and what would keep the people that want to stay here here or coming back.
Yeah.
The boomerang, but not just the boomerang because of family, boomerang because, wow, I want to live in Toledo type thing.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yes.
So I sit on a board with a Palantir exec. We think about Anduril, we think about Palantir, we think about NVIDIA no longer being a gaming, I think it was a sound card or graphics card group before.
Yeah.
So the Fortune 500 thing, I think we could do it. But I think it's got to be new tech, new startup, new stuff. I don't think we're going to like call GE and get them to move their corporate headquarters here. I don't even think with let's just say, and I don't agree with everything, let's just say we tariff the crap out of everybody. I don't think Novo Nordisk is going to find Northwest Ohio. Now, I can say from what I've talked to RGP about is when they have a looker, they can close the looker. So RGP has an awesome close rate. And I think probably if we could let's start thinking about Fortune 500s, not through the traditional, like just attraction, but how do we fund companies that could be Fortune 500? I think we could be there. I know that there is glass technology in this ecosystem. I know there is additive manufacturing. I know there is advanced materials. I know there is AI sitting in this room, sitting in this building that with the right support could be. And that's the thing is people don't realize in today's world of unicorns and fast risers, it's in months, not years. It's in weeks sometimes and I've been part of it, where that one single thing is like, that's it. And by the way, I know Toledoans who that's happened to, but they end up in Miami or they're in Chicago. And I've rode in their Bugattis, and I'm like, well, that's your car? And you're like, no, that's my car. Oh shit. And so it happens. It's just, it's not happening here. And so to just counter your point respectfully, it could happen.
Well, I graciously take that. I would like to see new Fortune 500.
100%.
Because we both had a presentation we saw by Tom Bush, and he just inspires me with his vision of, hey, we could have 200 startups next year, but we need that VC funding.
Yeah, the early stage.
Keep that brain power here. Why should Ann Arbor, 45 minutes up the road, as you alluded to, be doing so great, where they don't have a lot of the infrastructure and everything we have to offer here? Why don't we get some UM grads to start up a company here and take 2 floors of an older building? And
well, it's interesting because if you've done work in the Middle East or you've done work in Africa, and I guess to some degree Latin America, you walk over a border, it's not a border, it's just imaginary. Tribes have floated between places and all this. And during the Toledo War, Ohio won and got Toledo. I mean, and you're exactly right. It's I think some business professor needs to do a case study, or economic development or urban planner or whoever, do a case study. Like, how can Ann Arbor, 45 minutes away, with ungodly high taxes, by the way, right? Like, if you look up property, it's insane because you've essentially fund the entire school with your property tax. And then Toledo's like just 35, 40, depending on how you drive. And it's like two different sides of a coin. So it's an interesting study, which means it can happen. I mean, that's the fact of the matter.
Is there anything you didn't touch on that you wanted to clarify from your article or your thoughts, expand on, or something you've been thinking about over the last week or two since that came out that you really want to get out there?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is, as I get these responses, and to be honest with you, I really only started looking at Toledo as a potential for myself, my family. I'm even calling my buddies in DC and Miami and telling them, you need to come up here. I only started looking at that about a year ago, and I feel guilty about that. But since I wrote the Blade article, and since some other things, have been brought to light, it's scary to see that Toledo has been through this before, just in different variations. And, I'm a Village of Ottawa Hills council member, and there's a book called Promises Made, Promises Kept, and it talks about the Ottawa Hills. And shout out to John Jones's grandma. She has a saying, the kid who's been burned is scared of fire. And there's another one that was brought up, and it said, Toledo's moniker is Promises Made, Promises Not Kept. And we don't want to get into that. So I think the fear is somehow I'm part of history repeating itself. I want to think that we're different this time. I think we have to be different this time. And again, I challenge, and I truly want to hear, if somebody can show me why this time it's not different, like we're not at the end of that rope, we're not at the end of that thing, I want to hear it, because there's nothing I would love to hear more. And I'm sure the population, which is, oh, there's a plan right around the corner, but that's yet to be revealed. And so that's just one thing I want to get out there is, history, they say is history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. Yeah. It doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. I don't want to be part of that rhyming conversation. And so definition of insanity, do the same thing, expect a different result. So that's really just what I want to get out there. And then also to the rest of the media, to you guys as well, when big things get announced, just publish it and publish in a positive light. We are not at a point where we can afford to take shots at each other.
So Darren, you shared some quotes, some points of knowledge. One of the new ones that's come out, that I'd like you to incorporate and answer this. Next Monday, you had to do something. FAFO. F around and find out. I can't say the first word because Mike has a very young audience. That just loves these Make It Happen podcasts.
Yes.
So you're fit FAFO on Monday.
Okay.
That let's try something. We're going to do this. We're changing.
What would I do?
Yep.
I would announce a early stage venture capital fund. I would put in first money. I would call the family office, make them put in more money. I would call a bunch of the rich folks around here whose money is invested outside Toledo. They would invest money. And then I would call a couple of the accelerators and funds that have invested in my company. Hopefully they put in money. And I would start that fund and I would pull off that Band-Aid. I would also, before that though, make an investment policy statement that says we have to invest in companies that stay in Toledo. And then we have to invest in companies where all the industry around Toledo is an off-taker of those companies. Sell to our own people. And then I would track that. And I would have, and then before that, one more one. I want a Toledo Community Fund. What is that? So what's going to happen is when Toledo pops, we're going to have all this uplift, right? Certain people are going to get rich. Certain people are going to gain money. But there's going to be a lot of Toledoans left behind. We need a Toledo fund where every Toledoan could invest $1 or $5 or $10 or $50. Of course, it has to be compliant to SEC rules and all this stuff. But it's a way for the community to get uplift and have skin in the game as we start to pop. We don't want increased segregation of socioeconomic levels here. We don't want the Toledo donut where everybody of means is here. Then there's like all this stuff down here. We want everybody to have uplift. So that would be the first thing. If I just FAFO'd next week, that's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got the Toledo FAFO Venture Capital Fund getting set up. So here's the real tough question then. You're bringing in outside investors to come to that fund. You're bringing them to Toledo. Where are you taking them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Oh, gosh. For breakfast, at my place. I think that when folks come to town, they want to have a home-cooked meal. I think, keeping them in a hotel may be fine, but let's have breakfast together. I think lunch, there's a lot of places. I'm a Zingos type guy. I like some Zingos. You can find me here at Toll House. Shout out to Will and Ange, all of them, for the members brunch or members lunch. For dinner, man, that's tough because a few things. We have some amazing immigrant populations here, and I had a Yemeni fish from this Yemeni spot on Holland and Sylvania.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. Shout out to those young guys and girls who started that restaurant. But we can't forget Toledo Club. We can't forget Toledo Country Club. We have some iconic histories here. And so we actually brought some 4, 5, 6-star resort operators here for an investor meet. And they walked in the Toledo Club and they said, holy smoke, folks. You guys know what you're sitting on here. And so those are some. Now, of course, Beirut, the Hajars, of course, right? And the museum for lunch to see Adam and eat in the museum atrium, of course. But I wanted to throw some shout outs there to those guys. That's what I would do, man. And really, I think you got to spread people around, because once they come here and they see it, by and far, I think people are trying to figure out how they, why aren't I here yet? And that's the question we're going to answer.
Well, Darren, thank you very, very much. I think the audience will find this extremely educational and little history and vision of where things are going, inspirational of what we can and should be doing, and instructional on what we've got to do. So thank you for writing that article. Thank you for caring. I mentioned at the beginning, cool people doing cool things. Well, the coolest thing you can do is care. And you've exhibited that. You want to do it. You want to get everybody else that cares together and move things forward. So thank you very much for that. Thanks for listening to the Make It Happen podcast here at Toll House tonight, and look forward to future episodes, and get your checkbooks ready for the TOLEDO FO Venture Capital Fund.